Hi,
Again,
everybody. Roxane is here.
sorry, I'm a few minutes late, gang. My Zoom keeps on updating, and every time it does, it's asking me for different stuff in order to get logged in. So here we are.
So Roxane, these are all operations people, a lot of director of operations. So we'd love to have a conversation on your video and kind of look at it from an operations point of view. Like, what do your operations people do in all of this?
The first thing that we're doing, and you guys have all watched the video? Good. I think that the first thing that we're doing is asking ourselves, how do we systematize getting this message out, right? Like, I went and created, let me share my screen. Host. Let's see. Can you guys let me share my screen?
Oh, yep. Is it not letting you? Hold on a second.
Thank you.
There you go. You should be good.
Excellent. So there are a few things. One is getting really systematic in testing out how this message can be pushed out through Lead Accelerator. One of the things that I found a little irritating about Lead Accelerator is that you can't just click into an ad that you've had to see what your settings were. I'm sure you've all found that. So me getting systematic about creating the ad sets that I'm going to use on a spreadsheet first, and then having some, so I've got everything in here. How am I setting it? What am I calling it? Is it attract listings? Is it generate buyers? Is it Facebook, Instagram? What's my message description? What media am I using? The follow-up, what is my duration? And then having some very clear, because I'm placing 2 or 4 of these a day, all with a $40 10-day budget. But what I'm doing is I'm then going in daily and monitoring. And if I'm in by day 5, I'm either pulling the plug or I'm replicating it, because my understanding and command is it's really day 3, 4, and 5 that you start seeing whatever lead flow you're going to have. And as of yet, I'm getting the reason I'm doing so many of these, and literally when I do 2 or 4 of them, it's the same exact information in it, but I change the image, or I change attract listings to attract buyers, or to advertise listings. So I'm just starting to play with it. And what I'm finding so far is I'm not getting the lead flow that I want out of it, but I'm getting an astonishing amount of impressions. I'm getting 6, 8, 10,000 impressions on an ad that's running for 4 or 5 days. So I know the information is landing. I just haven't learned how to monetize it yet. So I think that really, especially given that we don't have, the other big change that I've seen is that now I'm almost all of my audience targeting is exclusively focused on, at least this campaign, on forbearance campaign, on job hunting, job interview, employment, not mortgage calculator, real estate. It's focused on the people who might be in employment difficulties so that we can be having those conversations with them. So the first thing from an operational point of view is, I think, getting very, very purposeful about testing this message every which way but Tuesday, because we're ahead of the conversation so far and we haven't learned how to monetize this in social media, right? That's my first suggestion. The second thing that we are starting to develop a system on, our team members, each one of our team members has got a personal geographic farm. So if any of your people do geographic farming, one of the things that we had our VA set up back whenever was, in addition cutting up the turfs for the 500 names that are in that specific farm. They created yet a last turf, which was any small businesses within that geographic area or close to it, so that when our folks go door knocking, they can also then spend a day doing door knocking into small businesses. So we already have those lists accumulated of small businesses. So now what we're starting to do is market directly into those lists of small businesses, because we know that these are the businesses that are most likely to be struggling right now. And behind every struggling business is a potential house problem, right? So we're looking at how do we do that through social media. We're doing right now a letter writing campaign. We've created a snail mail campaign that's going out to all these small businesses saying, hey, from one business owner to another business owner. There are things that we are doing that might be of benefit to you. So looking at systematizing that, what is the list of those people? How do we know? We did a designated phone number, a grasshopper phone number, so that any response from that will be coming through a single phone number that's trackable, so we can start seeing if these conversations are taking hold and traction. And then, of course, a video campaign that we've been doing. Look at this big face. I'm working on this as we speak. There's me, and I'm doing.
Everything there is to know about opportunities, and are aware of where they're being planted as far as a couple of exciting things on the roadmap as well.
Is that who is doing this?
Opportunities.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was being distracted. I thought that I was showing you a video, and instead I started a video. See how I am? Shut up. So systematizing, how do we take small videos, short videos? I'm doing like a long version and a short version video on all the various messages that I have going right now. And here are some examples of them, right? Let me share it again. Here we go. So like I've got one that's on how to help small businesses, sample forbearance agreement, retirement funds, refinance versus HELOC, house rich, cash poor, great. And I'm doing a long version and a short version of each one of these videos. So the long version, when I say long version, we're talking about a minute and a half that can be inserted into smart plans, right? And then also a 15 or 20-second version of the same thing with a hook that can then be inserted into our lead accelerator. And the other thing that we are now doing as well is for every one of these lead accelerator messages that we're advertising using paid advertising, we're doing a corresponding free social post through Lead Accelerator as well. And we're tying that back to a forbearance website page and capture form in our command agent site. So any questions on that so far? No, look at all you guys. You're taking notes.
I picked up some things like Paula, can you send out like the recording of this by any chance?
I'll post this recording for you guys.
Okay, because I had like 400 ideas while that was happening.
That's awesome. Tell us some. What's mastermind? What are you coming up with?
So one of the things that we do here, mindset wise, is we have a very strong mindset of beta testing. We beta test everything, and we're test and retest and retest. So looking at your approach to it is awesome to me. The one thing that I'm not doing right now is tracking. I know it here. However, what if something happened to me, God forbid?
That's right.
It's, having that visual on it and the content and being so like concise with the, each one of the pieces of the advertising, I think is very strong. We're doing a lot of the similar things that you're doing, which is awesome. We're doing the hard mailers as well. The video, there's opportunity there for us too. And I like the idea of doing the short video with, the hero call to action, and then the longer, a little bit more, like you said, that could be tied into smart plans. So we use a lot of smart plans as well. So that's great.
Roxane, David's team does do short sales. They've been doing short sales for years, so they're very into that.
What market are you?
We're located in Lakeland, Florida, which is right in between Tampa and Orlando. So
okay.
There's a lot of opportunity here, and they're about to open back up foreclosures in Polk County, which is our county location, and the contiguous counties around us. They've already started.
Right. So this is
we've
coming fast and furious.
Yeah, and we've already, within this week alone, we've had 4 total short sales from Cassandra, from one agent, and we anticipate, gaining a lot of that. We're probably the largest, even though we're a very small team, we're probably the largest short sale agency around.
Yeah, we did hundreds of them. The other thing that I think from an operations point of view, right, is that the Rainmaker, I think that everybody is still kind of in this overall euphoria that we're still, okay, man, we didn't all die. We're opening back up again. We still only have a month of inventory, massive multiple offers. And we all know they're small, that's gonna stop. And that when it stops, it's going to do so abruptly and very painfully. So I think that it falls upon you guys to be really tracking the leading indicators that'll tell us that the market is shifting, right? I think that if you make it, somebody needs to be on the phone with your title closer, or your sales rep at the title company weekly and finding out what, and you're asking the same question every week, is the fail rate increasing on transactions? Because if the fail rate is increasing on transactions in Colorado, we run at about a 15% fail rate. The minute that pops up to 17, 18, that's an indicator to me that the buyers are deciding that the homes are no longer worth what they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago when they went under contract, right? A month ago, the fail rate was because of the lending. Now it's not. The lending is starting to stabilize. If there's failures happening, when the failure rate starts to go up, that's because of buyers losing confidence. And that's the beginning of a big financial shift in values. So that's one of the leading indicators I'd be looking at closely. I'd be looking closely at days on market. I'd be looking at that thing every day. How many days on market are we having, and how many price reductions we're looking at. So these leading indicators start giving you, and if you just start every week in whatever version of a weekly meeting you have, you just start reporting these numbers. By the way, a month ago we were at a 15% fail rate. Right now we're at a 19% fail rate on transactions. So that informs the conversations that our sales side has to have with clients. Right? All of a sudden, the sellers are not to be prepped that they're going to get multiple offers and it's going to be the Hunger Games, right? We need to be changing those expectations. And if we've got this type of leading indication data, that allows us in our listing appointments to be realistic with the sellers. And that's going to be the name of the game, because there's going to be this little brief period of time where if you go in there and you give people truth about where the values are going, then their discussion becomes about your commission. Right? I'm not going to work with you because you charge too much. Of course, if we go in there with good data sets and we can be talking about them with trending, that allows us to prepare our listing agents to get the prices below where the trend is going, which gives them the sales. And then we don't all have short sale inventories of 100 properties that are sitting on the market for 3.5 years, for the love of God, while we attempt to negotiate these things, right? What else? Any other input?
Well, what I was going to say is I love the fact you had brought that up, Roxane, about the commission, because that's where it starts to cut to as a result of that. And not just that, because I think that's a pretty clear example and people understand that. It also becomes a problem because from the operations side, what we hear from Rainmakers is we're not cutting our commission, but we got to add more value.
That's
and
right.
More value, people sometimes don't know what the cost is.
That's right. That's right. There is another thing for you guys to be preparing for, whether or not you do short sales as a team or we're just looking at the market shifting and higher fail rate. The chances that it isn't just a chance, we will have to be selling houses multiple times, right? So that creates a greater systemic strain on the front office than you guys are used to. So any efficiencies that you can be preparing for now, right? What are the common conversations that we have with our clients? The same conversation that usually, when you're closing 15, 20 transactions a month, or 30 or 50 or whatever, you're staffed right now to be able to pick up the phones and have those conversations one-on-one. But we should be looking at how we systematize what are exactly the conversations, particularly with short sale, with forbearance, with foreclosures. There are a lot of dicey conversations, right? Like in Colorado, we've got a hearing that happens during the foreclosure process itself, that all it is a procedural hearing for the judge to determine, yes, this is the true borrower, and yes, they in fact are in arrears, and yes, in fact, this is a valid foreclosure. So I know that there's no reason that the seller needs to go to that thing. It's a procedural hearing, but they get a document where they were named as a plaintiff, right? So it is very delicate, and I want somebody reviewing my language on that thing. And if I'm writing that delicate whole paragraph that's saying, disclaimer, I'm not an attorney, however, this is the purpose of this thing. If you want more information, you should talk to so-and-so. Writing that carefully worded email so that it imparts the information that they need without assuming the liability of giving them legal advice. Me crafting such an email may take me 15, 20 minutes, review it, read it backwards and forward. You guys got to start a library of that and start creating those as signatures and in your Google emails, right? If you've got those, you can go in through labs and create additional script signatures so that you start having whatever these 50 common conversations on each of these topics are already built right into your signatures so that you can boom, 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 and customize as needed. We need to look at how to build increased efficiencies because you guys are going to be asked to do more with less time. Right? And we know that we're likely to see downward pressure on commissions. If not downward pressure on commissions, we're likely to see more instances where we're having to buy away problems. When you're doing short sales, damn, you get to the closing table, somebody didn't tell somebody at title that the reason there's no outstanding tax is showing on the property is because it in fact has already gone to tax sale, and you're informed, damn, if you want to get this thing closed, somebody's got to pay $4,000 in taxes. That usually comes out of the agent's commission because there's a foreclosure tomorrow. It's happening or it's not, right? So we are going to see the type of we don't make a habit of it, but the reality is in a distressed market, there are more things that end up coming out of the rainmaker's pockets. And as a result, the more efficiencies we can have so that the additional hiring decisions that your rainmakers are going to be made are delayed as long as humanly possible. Almost every rainmaker I know, being one myself, my sole focus right now from a team perspective, how do I preserve payroll? How do I preserve payroll? And since that's my focus, I'm demanding more from my front office. But I say to them, that isn't the right word. I'm communicating clearly that my sole focus right now is preserving payroll. And though I've always been very productive of all of your time, when the day is done at the end of Friday, unless there's blood shooting out of a wall, I don't contact my admin until Monday. They work hard. Right now, I'm expecting somebody to be able to hop on it and help me if I got an emergency right now, and they are happy to do so because my sole focus is preserving their payroll. They get that, right? So us asking what we can do to help the rainmakers stretch our capacity just a little further with these efficiencies are going to be able to extend out their need for hiring. David will tell you, when you run short sales, that is very labor intensive. Do you guys do in-house negotiations? Do you do them yourselves?
So we actually take the negotiation process with the banks. We have a very close relationship with a specific like sister branch of our title company. And that individual, Michelle Lehman, and her team, that's all that they do. And they only handle those short sales. That's what they specialize in. That is their 20%. That's what they do. So they handle
you outsource it.
Yeah. Leverage out.
Good. For those of you, we did it in-house versus out-house, we called it. I won't do that again, right? Literally, I had to have 3 times the staff just for the paper chase, right? There may be a whole other aspect of this, and this is something to talk to the rainmakers about as well. I sure think unless we see some big congressional action that changes this state of affairs, I suspect my crystal ball is saying that once we see these forbearance agreements coming due, as the banks are saying, we're going to negotiate with you, right? We've already discussed in the video the chance of that happening in an expeditious manner are pretty slim, right? Is there a business opportunity in there where you start offering assistance, guidance, whatever, in helping people with those negotiations with the bank? We know that most of those negotiations, if they're actually going the route of loan modification, where they want to see everybody's paper chase, they want to see all the documents they would have seen before, we can give them some guidance, right? We could create forms to say, this is the information they're going to ask for you to do. Write your loan number at the bottom of each page, fax it, make sure that you got it in a PDF so that you can fax it multiple times, because there's going to be a window pointed, there's going to be a fax machine at the bank pointed right out the window, and you're going to have to fax it multiple times until it gets an updraft and actually lands on somebody's desk. Yet we know full well that the majority of those people are likely to go into default while they're waiting for a response. And if we're actually helping them with this discussion at that point, and we're giving them guidance on how to be working through that loan modification process, when and if that fails, we're the ones in the position to step in and be a listing resource for them.
And Roxane was not making a mistake when she said fax and didn't say email.
Fax. When I started, I had one of those Brothers fax machines that would only take 6 pages at a time, right? So you've got your stack of 100 and you're going 6, and you're watching the last one, and you put the next 6 in, and then you get to page 98 and starts to eat it. You get to start all over again, and then you sit on hold with Chase for 3 hours listening to their hold music in Loss Mitigation, which is When You Wish Upon a Star. That's some cold crap right there, man, on a cracker. Right? So we should be asking ourselves from an operations point of view, how do we use helping the consumer right now as a form of prospecting? And you guys are going to be better suited to do that than the agents, because a lot of these are administrative functions, right? Reminding somebody, hey, it's time for your call to the bank. How do we systematize that? Are there any, is this something that you need me to have an agent speak with you? There are some things where you guys could also be potentially dialing in. If you look at the operations end of the world, Gary's been saying for years that the client experience and the loyalty of the client is not owned by the agent or the rainmaker. It's owned by this room, right? So are there care calls that we all could be making into the database on transactions that we've closed in the past 2-3 years to say, hey, I just wanted to touch bases. Roxane was really concerned about you, and knows that a lot of folks are getting these forbearance agreements, and wondered if you'd like to have a conversation with her about it. You could basically set up that first communication so that, and these are easy to set up. You're just calling people who already love you because you owned the transaction and you own that client relationship. You're not selling squat. All you're doing is offering a conversation with the rainmaker. What else?
Tom, you're on mute.
Am I?
Oh, I unmuted myself. Sorry. Hey, Roxane.
Unmute your heart. Unmute your heart. Hey,
question for you from just kind of a forecasting standpoint. Let's just roll through this scenario real quick. People are on forbearance for the last 1 or 2 months. Maybe they got another month or 2 left, right? They're doing 3 months. Some of the banks may allow you to go 6 months. Let's just say then they don't get caught up. In our state, in Maryland, you get the letter of intent to foreclose usually after 90 days of being behind.
Yep.
And then it's anywhere from 6 to 12 months that you could get foreclosed upon. Throw in the fact that we're guessing how many of the 36 million people will go back to work. When do you actually see this tidal wave starting to crest? Like, to prepare our operations department, do we have we're going to start making the calls, but is it 6 months before the tsunami hits the beach? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking 6 to 9 months before the tsunami hits the beach. But here's the thing, is that by the time the tsunami hits, the people are already being drowned. They won't call you. They won't talk to you.
Right.
Right.
So I say that from a standpoint of, if we catch someone early in Maryland in an extreme seller's market, we could get someone out before the bell gets rung, right? Like,
That's exactly right.
That's what I'm trying to discover, figure out the timing of it. We know the great deals in real estate are going to come in 12 to 18 months probably, right?
Right. And if somebody can have this conversation in a way that's compelling and intelligent, right? Really, but we don't vomit it on people right in that first conversation. If somebody's thinking about selling in the next 3 to 5 years, or they have a forbearance agreement and they are house rich and cash poor, we should really be talking to them about selling their house in the next 90 days. But we don't go right to that first. It's this series of conversations and services that we're entering into the world with them on that actually gets them to that realization. You keep having these conversations, they will self-realize that this is the path to go. And if not, then you're there to grab them.
And our team's never marketed for short sales. We've always organically ran into them. I'm a original CDPE agent from way back in the day. Remember that designation?
I sure do.
That guy made a couple $1 million just selling a designation back in 08.
Yep.
But what you're prescribing is actually having not only the care calls to the database, but like a social media outreach in addition to smart plans. I came in the call a couple minutes late.
That's exactly it. You want to have social media outreach. You want to have paid social media outreach. You want to be beta testing it all. At any given time on paper in Command, we got a couple $100 worth of ads running, but we're never spending that because we're pulling the plug at 5 days, right? But right now, and I'm talking to the engineers, it's beyond my comprehension that we could have 10,000 impressions and not a single lead. So I'm hoping that there's a problem with that I'm glitching on Command in some way. But even if I'm not, right? Even if I'm getting 10,000 impressions, which means 10,000 people are intrigued by this, I'm getting click-throughs, but I'm not getting the leads off of it. It may be that, and that's why I'm also doing parallel on posting, on regular posting, not just the paid media, right? But we got to play with this because there's no easy way to build it in Command right now, because Command wasn't, I'm telling you, if Command had been rolled out in 07, 08, there'd be a whole range of interests around short sale foreclosure, blah, 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 and that's going to get in there, and I bet it's going to get in there quick, but it isn't there now. So we have to be focusing on employment and jobs.
Do you do any detriment to your regular sellers that you're marketing right now if you're getting on social media and talking about the tsunami coming? Does it inadvertently scare buyers in the moment away, or should we not worry about stuff like that?
Well, I'm very charming, and I don't quite describe it as the tsunami coming, right? And then the other side of the mouth is, right? If you're a buyer, and I have this conversation very frankly with people, if you're a buyer buying into this market, are we likely to see the values drop? Absolutely. And we're at 60-year low interest rates. Right? So if you're planning on being in this house for 3 to 5 years and you can get almost free money for doing it, who cares if your house loses some value and then bounces back up again?
Great.
The issue is affordability, housing affordability right now. And rather than asking them if they're planning on being in a house for 1 or 2 years to determine whether or not this is a good plan for them to do, I'm asking them 3 to 5 years. So we can have both of these messages just padded differently.
And last question, I'll go back to mute so other folks can ask questions. Do you think, in your expert opinion, they're going to try to push some streamlined forbearance plans through the next
Oh God,
version
I
of the
hope
CARES
so.
Act?
I sure hope so. And
And if they do that, does that change everything we're talking about?
it does potentially, right? If it does. One of the things that we saw, and we're seeing pressure on this, we didn't see Fannie and Freddie and government-backed loans come out until about 2.5 weeks ago saying, whoa, no, we're not going to do balloon payments, right? And that was because people were screaming about it, right? As we are, it could well be that we're screaming an argument right now that gets this into the CARES Act. Then this becomes not so much a forbearance discussion, but we're still preparing for an unemployment based recession, right?
And do you think it grandfathers the folks who already inked forbearance agreements that weren't so favorable if that gets done?
Most, who knows? But what we're seeing for the most part is that the vast majority of these don't have any terms, right?
Yeah, it's
I would
almost
love
like
it if
verbal.
the CARES Act, yeah, they're saying, well, stop paying now, we'll figure it out later. We will contact you within 30 days of the end of your forbearance agreement. That number is sitting at close to 5 million people right now. Anybody who thinks the bank is going to have, even if they were calling up to say, carte blanche, you're good, you know, we're forgiving it or we're putting it at the end of the loan, do they have the wherewithal to make 5 million calls in 30 days? It ain't going to happen. You come to Colorado and smoke some hope.
And if we've been sitting around 2% distressed nationwide, what do you think this brings us to? Do you get up
It's
to
going to depend
10%
upon
distressed?
employment, right? We're looking at, this is very, very different from 07 and 08 in that by the time that the distressed market hit, people were upside down, right? Right now, some vast majority of Americans are sitting on 50% equity positions. That isn't to say there won't be people upside down, but the people who will be upside down, I'm sure David will attest this, are likely to be the people who bought in the last 2 years, right? If you had 8% appreciation, it costs you 6% to sell the thing in commissions, another 2% in closing costs. If you bought in the last year, right now, you're upside down using that math. If when we see a rush to the market of the pent up people who their employment doesn't come back, and even when the forbearance period comes up, they're still not in a position to start making their mortgage, those folks are going to rush to the market, and that is wholly dependent upon what the employment rate is going to be. So do we think we're going to go back to 3% unemployment? I don't. Do we think we're going to get to 10% unemployment? That's Great Depression era. It could get better, but I'm already seeing small businesses go under, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even as we're opening up a bunch of restaurants. Restaurants run on tight profit margins. We get spoiled in real estate. A well-run restaurant, 6-7% profit margin, and all of a sudden they're being told they have to cut their clientele in half overnight.
Or by 2/3.
These businesses are going under, right? It's just, it may be is it going to happen quickly, or is it going to happen? So what happens? Do we see those? There's so many big questions on this. I was just listening to a report on NPR yesterday, and they were talking about how some of the big .coms, Google, Amazon, Facebook, are now really starting to re-examine the question of whether or not they need these large campuses. It's turning out that people, as much as they love the free lunch and the foot rub in the office, they're liking working from home better, and they're seeing high productivity rates out of these people. Great. So, I'm saying the same thing. I'm never going to require my TC to come back to the office, even though she's got a 6-month-old baby. If Gary Keller says that we lose 1/3 of the day through distraction, why not let that distraction be her baby? I'm fine with that, right? I'm getting the same level of work out of her. So as we're seeing right now, there's kind of this mind shift on remote versus on campus. But if you think that through, run it down to the ground with big monsters like Amazon and Facebook, and Google, there's a small step from that to saying, let's start going overseas for this labor. And if we're going to go overseas for this labor, that might start seeing wage pressure, right? So even though we may see ourselves go back up to a higher employment level, get back into the single digits, but we may well see wage pressures because companies, once they no longer have a financial incentive to keep people employed because they're getting government money for it, I think a lot of them are realizing you can do more with less, which is likely to either underemploy, apply downward pressure on wages. That all is going to create housing problems from the employment side of the world. So even if we sidestep this forbearance bullet, that that first round of people who are unemployed when their forbearance is due are going to bring a rush to the market. That's going to take our this 1 month inventory that a lot of us are still seeing and probably balance it out and pull it more into the buyer side. Once we see that, the values drop another 10%. That takes a whole other year of people. Now we're back 2 years into the distressed people who are upside down. And that's if we have a minimum of 10%. If all we have is a 10% drop in value, we're looking at 2 whole years of recent purchases who are upside down. And when they have normal life events, then we're into short sales. But what we're not going to see is a big internal flood of spiraling values because of the mortgages, because it's a different situation. Now and the last handful of big recessions we've seen, housing crashes, have been internal. S&L, Great Recession, those were all caused by messed up lending practices. This is a good old-fashioned employment recession.
And I wasn't dealing with any foreclosures with people who had equity in the last recession. So it is a new dynamic. So I never even had to think about if I have $100,000 in equity and I get foreclosed upon, the bank is going to send me the balance of the equity after all the fees and the auction and the attorney stuff comes out of it, right?
That's correct, but it's going to be a fraction of what it would have been had they sold it before they went into default. Plus, if they go through that whole process, they're getting a fraction of the money and they've got a foreclosure on their record and all those late mortgage payments, right? So they may well be in a position where, and a lot of them, people get desperate. A lot of them start putting their money on their credit cards. So they may well find themselves in a position where they have to do a bankruptcy, where had they sold before they went into default, instead they got 100 grand in the bank. Now, they got 15,000, 20,000 in the bank, destroyed credit.
And now they're striking deals with landlords like, I'll pay you 6 months rent in advance just to accept me because my credit's so beat up. And like you said, I have less than 100,000. Would you say it's a good 20% haircut on your equity if you went all the way to foreclosure? So
at least,
so our agents can kind of say, hey, look, I get it, and your 100,000 could turn into 80,000 if we're lucky at the end of this, plus all the other ramifications.
Well, I think that when you think about that haircut, right, so that's going to be individual to the person's situation. It depends. Were they in 6 months of forbearance? If they were in 6 months of forbearance and their mortgage payment was $2,000 a month, right?
They're going to recoup that.
$24,000 before their legal fees, right? So that you're still going to have to pay the back payments by way of a reduced payoff, right, if you sold it straight out. But the legal fees on that might well be, I think 20% is a conservative haircut to look on that, because the banks have everybody's foreclosure laws are a little bit different. But in Colorado, it's the bank that sets that opening bid, right? About is getting it sold to an investor quick, so they may end up pricing that thing for $50,000 below market value to get a fast offer, and that's $50,000 that could have gone in the seller's pocket.
And just because I've lost track of it, do you know if the Debt Forgiveness Act was extended for the folks?
It was not.
So when did it terminate?
Expired in 2012. And that would require congressional action. And I think that, unfortunately, I am deeply saddened and borderline alarmed that this thing now is being politicized, right? How can it be politicized, right? And when we're looking at this, we have to be very careful in our script work. You're
going to offend half the people. You got to be careful.
Got to be very careful. I would also set up, because you can start feeding information when you look at content for videos, right? I set up, you guys all know how to do Google Alerts. You go to Google Alerts, and it'll allow you to set up a digest, an email digest of articles that fit the parameters that you set up in that Google alert. Just put a couple in there: mortgage forbearance, mortgage deference, COVID forbearance, and literally you'll get a digest, you'll get an email with 6, 7, 8, 10 articles. I would stay away from anything on the far left, anything on the far right, anything that talks about politics, right? This is all about straight up numbers. And if we can focus on that, that gives your rainmaker the content they need. Hey, this article, you print off 3, 4 articles. Literally, most of us are on the fly. Give me my 3 articles, point a camera at me, have me do 2-minute videos and 15-second videos on those 5 articles, and then you've got your posting material for a week.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I hear you saying, and I think what the most important thing is, people will grow into the conversation that we create around them, right? So it's creating this conversation and starting it now. And then what does that look like, moving from entrepreneurial to a purposeful conversation, getting focused and creating a model across those platforms, which is what Roxane is saying, because we don't know what the market's going to do. We have no idea, right? And all those are great questions, and we don't know. So if we create the conversation now, it allows you then to get into a relationship, like Roxane's saying, where if you know them so well, a next call explaining what the market's doing and how it's pivoted and changed is much easier if you start that conversation.
Man, I got great news. They gave a blanket, whatever. Now let's have a conversation. Are you in a position, if you need to refinance, if your house rich and cash poor, can you make these payments for 3 months? Because then that'll allow you, that's just a shift we've seen since I made that video. If you can sustain those payments for 3 months, then you could conceivably be able to refinance if you're employed. Great news. Doesn't matter that the information has changed. In fact, it's better that the information has changed, because you got a reason to call them about it.
Another thought I've gotten out of this as you've been talking, Roxane, is really knowing what your foreclosure rules are in your area, know what the process is, know where to get the information.
Yep. Find out what the foreclosure rules are that are you know, when I used to do my short sale consultations, they all started out, I had a little spreadsheet that I had built that it was a graphic that somebody could fill in while they were talking. And the whole appointment started out with, well, look, I'm sorry you're in this situation, but first we need to start out knowing that the only thing your mortgage company ever agreed to was to take your house away from you if you stop making your mortgage payment. So let's start out by making sure you understand what the foreclosure process is, because that's the only thing they have agreed to, and this could be heading in that direction. Then we will discuss other options and try to find one that puts you in a better position. But you being able to explain that foreclosure process is really, really important. And in case your rainmaker can't do it, you guys dig into your vendor sheet. Y'all need to find a good bankruptcy attorney who will be willing to give free legal advice and not automatically point them towards bankruptcy because you're giving them enough partnership leads. A good CPA who's willing to give them a free consultation, free tax advice. If we look at some type of a tax burden coming out of a deficiency for a short sale or a foreclosure. You need to have a good financial planner who will help them understand the long-term impact on their retirement to pull funds out of those accounts now. And these conversations are way above our pay grade, but we need to be like the tour guide of all this information. We've got our arms wrapped around the conversation itself. Now I need you to speak with the attorney. Call me back and let me know what he said. Now I need you to speak with the CPA. So we're the tour guide of that conversation, even though we're not giving that advice. You are muted, David, unless you're just singing.
I was informing on one of our coworkers, but since you're getting an opportunity, when you were talking about when you're getting a lot of impressions and no leads, sometimes you can go into Facebook and that ad manager, is sometimes they'll
They're stuck in there.
they'll like disconnect. Yeah. And you'll be able to find all like a whole bunch of leads that are in there. So just
Thank
something
you.
to think about. Yeah.
We will go check on that. Yeah. All right. Any other questions before we get wrapped up, gang?
Hey, Roxanne, I just did a little research because I just wanted to confirm, and I thought the Mortgage Forgiveness Act was extended. I'm reading an article here that says it was due to expire December 31st, 2017, and it was extended to December 31st, 2020. So I'm not saying that's the gospel, but just so we can all check into that.
Forgiveness Act, that one?
Yeah, the Mortgage Forgiveness Act, yep. So the canceled debt from the
From the tax
foreclosure
burden?
and short sale event, yeah. But just something for us to all research. I'm not saying it's true,
We should absolutely check that out.
but we need to look into it so we can all be on the same page.
Yep, absolutely. Mortgage forgiveness, tax rate extended through 2020. That's what I'm seeing on NOLO.
Which would be great news.
It would be great news because then all of a sudden it gives us an added value add when we're doing short sale negotiations, because if we can, not everybody knows how to negotiate waivers in those deficiencies. And those of us who can do it, it also allows us to differentiate ourselves from the boneheads who are just churning and burning.
Yep. Well, I would hope in the CARES Act they would extend it even further with this wave of stuff coming. So
I would hope so. I would really hope so. It's this thing is so big, right? We've never yanked the electrical cord out of the wall of the global economy before all at once for months on end. I wouldn't be surprised if anything happened. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody just said, make it so nobody owes anybody anything and we're just going to keep doing business for a year until this washes over. Of course that's not going to happen. Yet if it happens, I'm not going to be surprised, because the problem is so big that the solutions are, this brings us back to WPA during the Great Depression, where they put millions of people to work building infrastructure, right? We might see millions upon millions of unemployed people be put right back to work doing contact tracing if this thing bounces back again in the fall as bad as some of the doctors are saying it will, right? So any and all is possible right now, including solutions. So yeah, I think Zachary had a good aha on that. Our job right now is to look at all, we project, we are analysts, we are trend studiers. And when we see, based on our experience, where are these trends going? What are the possible branches that come off of them? And how do we have an intelligent plan to be ahead of the puck on each one of those things? That's how we consume market share and preserve payroll.
it's truly a skills-based market.
It sure is. It sure is. And a bunch of boneheads are going to fall out. And by the way, if there's any of you guys who own recruitment or have anything in recruitment, we should also, I don't know if all of you have access to broker metrics, but this is a time to be looking for, talent, to be top grading, right? Top grading on the sales side. And as from the admin point of view, I mean, you guys are in the position right now to be attracting legal secretaries, people who've been running 100-person legal firms, handling a bunch of type A personality goofballs with egos the size of Toledo with a bunch of files and legal consequences. Does that sound familiar to any of us? Right? So you might have the opportunity to be building out your ops situation right now with a caliber of talent that we haven't been able to get our hands on in years.
Are you telling us we should set up our short sale mill now?
Oh, darling. Yeah. Your short sale mill, your anything mill,
Yeah.
right? You might well be able to get, you might well see somebody who has been doing all of this, who's been doing high level social media work at Facebook lose their job to somebody in Bangladesh, because if you can pay two people with the same education for the same job and you can pay one of them 20% of it, that person in Silicon Valley may find themselves out without work. all of a sudden the 50, 60, 70 grand that they might be able to earn on one of our teams starts looking appealing when you're looking at that, or Starbucks. So really think outside of the box. This employment situation is going to open up ways that we can lever the important parts of what we do, and really learning how to, and I'm horrible at social media. I'm doing the serious dig in, try to figure this damn thing out right now, so that I'm not the one who just squawks about the problem but doesn't have a way of monetizing it, which I'm famous for.
Well, you brought up a good point. If major companies kind of get used to the idea of their local United States talent working from home, they're going to start saying, well, if they're not coming to the office, why does it matter if they live in Toledo or Bangladesh?
That's right. I think that's going to cause downward wage pressure. That's just my crystal ball. Just like, 20 years ago, I was saying, as we had it, I'm from Detroit. I'm from D-Town, and the home of the labor movement, right? And whenever you have a labor movement, the labor movement starts demanding living wages and some benefits and some health care and some worker safety. These are, that's the trajectory. And those movements start in the basements somewhere. And then eventually they lead to that improvement in wages, benefits, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of the trajectory. Well, we've seen, and those are born out of industrial revolutions, which we've been seeing happening in China for the past 20 years. And what did we see? As China got an emerging middle class, it brought the whole middle class of the entire globe down, because now the average man is an auto worker in China, right? So even if they go from abject poverty to the labor movement, elevating them into a middle class, it's relative, right? And that relativity, I think that we're likely to see a whole other employment revolution that comes out of this thing too, but that's my squawking for another day.
Well, we are just about out of time. And Roxane, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. I think
It is my pleasure. And I'm so sorry I missed last week. I was right in the process of moving, and my internet was all up and down and all bad excuses, but somehow it didn't make its way to the calendar. So thanks for confirming twice, Paula. That's what it takes right now. And I'm around if we want to have a follow-up conversation, if we want to mastermind on this. This is a powerful group of people, and we know who runs the universe of all your rainmakers. It's this little brain trust, right?
Yeah. You've given us a lot to think about. Thank you.
Good, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
You guys
you,
take
Roxane.
care. Thank you.
See ya.